Welcome to DevReady Podcast, where we're helping non-techs build better tech. Today, we're talking to two people from ArchiStar. One is Rob Coorey, who is the co-founder of ArchiStar, and also Chris Clark, who is the head of consulting. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Welcome. No, appreciate it. Now, I've been hearing a lot from Chris. I've known Chris for quite a number of years now. I don't even know how many, but quite a number. And he obviously came onto the ArchiStar team about three and a half years ago, and he's been telling me a lot about how you're changing the landscape in terms of how we find property sites and develop sites, and how you actually understand what can fit on a site based on council regulations and all the bits and pieces in between. But love to hear it from yourself, Rob, as to what the benefit of ArchiStar is and what value it's bringing to the marketplace.
Yeah, well, in its current format, what we've got to now is essentially it's a tool that helps you find and assess property development sites. So basically, our core customer is a property developer who's looking for new sites. They'll come onto ArchiStar, they'll look for some sites, we'll help them find them, we'll help them do some due diligence, some financial analysis in real time, and even then generate some real-time building designs to help them show exactly what would fit on that block of land in conjunction with the local government rules. So yeah, it's quite an evolved piece of software. It's come a long way since we first started, and yeah, but we're really excited about how far it's come.
It sounds like it would be evolved to get to that point. I imagine there's a massive amount of data that's coming into a platform like this. How has that come together in terms of the actual application?
Yeah, well, maybe Chris is the best place to answer that because he was a big force in helping us get that all set up.
Yeah, pure. Thanks, Rob. Pure grunt work, really. Because we're dealing with government and councils, and we're dealing with sources that are really varied in both their format and their complexity. Australia itself is quite complex as far as the planning rules and those sort of things go. And I think at last count, we're in the hundreds of thousands of person hours of collating and ETL and all those sort of things.
It's a lot of hours, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot of hours.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of automation involved as well, and it's something that we're just getting better and better at every day.
And I suppose it's a bit of a learning there. So in terms of, tell us about how the business sort of started. Where did it come from? Where did it stem from? Where did the idea really begin from, and then to where it is now?
Yeah, look, I think, Andrew, if you take a look at the original formation of the company, it started with my brother, Dr. Ben Coorey, and essentially his background is in generative design and parametric design. And what they both mean is essentially you can enter in some parameters of what you want, and then the computer will generate some different building designs based on what you're looking for automatically. So most architects will kind of draw one building at a time, whether it's a sketch on paper or AutoCAD or something like that. Whereas Ben will write a few lines of programming code and it will generate, tens, if not hundreds of building designs based on what you're looking for. So Ben was very early to market with that. And the business really started as a consulting and education business. So Ben would go out and consult to the big firms and to the unis. He built some software called ArchiStar Academy, where basically it's like an e-learning platform where you could learn how to do generative and parametric design. And that's still kicking along now very nicely. So we've got a lot of universities and corporates globally who still use that learning platform. And after about probably a few years of pushing that out through the market, I sold my marketing agency. My background's more in marketing and sales and kind of business. And after I sold my agency, I said, Ben, I'll help you out a couple of days a week and kind of grow this business and see how we go. Ended up being, that was 6 years ago, still here. But it's been a great journey. So basically we built the academy. That did really well. What we found was that there's a very, very big part of the market that didn't want to learn C# programming. But they had
I can imagine.
It's pretty dry. It's not for everyone, but some people love it and they get stuck into it. But a lot of people are just more business people that are like, hey, look, I'm kind of developing property sites. Can you help me find sites? And can you help me kind of generate some building designs that might fit on those sites? And so we originally started like a bit of an MVP of building out a software platform to help developers find and assess and kind of generate sites and building designs. And we got some seed funding for our first few investors, and kind of the rest is history. So we've raised over $30 million now, and We've got 70 staff. So it's come a very long way from those early days of an MVP concept.
It has grown pretty quickly. In terms of, let's take it back a little bit to MVP. So there's a lot of people we're speaking to would be in that early stages of developing product and thinking about ideas and concepts they want to commercialize. How did you first approach the MVP that you took to market to developers? What was some of the thinking there?
Yeah, so we originally started with the software and then, the e-learning academy. And then some of the bigger clients would come to us and say, look, can you guys do like this project for us? So we're looking at this site in Parramatta, and we're not sure what's going to fit in here. Could you guys take a look and tell us what would fit? And then so we ended up doing a few of those consulting projects for people. And then we realized, okay, well, if we did this, if we really structured this well, we can actually turn one of these around in 24 hours. And so we said, okay, look, we're going to offer a new service. So send us your site and then we'll turn it around in 24 hours. And it was a lot of work in 24 hours. I think,
especially if you get a few bundles.
When we were doing that, and very stressful for the team.
It was the definition of hustle.
It was hustle, yeah. So, basically, you've got to look at all the planning regulations, the feasibility of it all, the designs. And so, if you gave me a kind of a site today, and I had to come up with that tomorrow, and that's assuming you haven't got any other work to do either, right? So
correct,
yeah. So we offered that service. We did about 30 of them, and then the clients would say, "Look, thanks, Rob. That was awesome. Really like the design that you did, but can you tweak this or can you tweak that? Or okay, I like that, but can you come up with a new concept now?" And then they'd even say, "Oh, can you do it even faster? Like, because an agent wants us to make a decision today. Like, and we're like, well, how fast do you know? Like, oh, like instant, So, so we realized that this was going to have to be a software solution rather than a better process solution. Because no matter how good you kind of drive people and how good your solutions are, any faster than a few hours is going to kind of be impossible. So, yes, basically we looked at every single step of what we were doing manually, and then kind of built that into the software so that people could do it themselves. And so, our original MVP was quite humble. It was for, like one state, just New South Wales only. There was no building designs on there. It was kind of just helping people find sites and do some basic assessment. And then, we had clients that said, oh, could you do, Perth, or could you do Melbourne, etc. And then we're like, yeah, well, New South Wales wasn't that hard, so I'm sure we can do the other states.
I'm sure there's not much difference between any of them, is there?
It's as Chris could probably tell you a bit more. Like there's, just because you could do one state doesn't mean all states are the same. So it was an incredible amount of work to kind of get the other states loaded in. Yeah,
I think there's a fair bit packed in that. There's a lot of learning for people to think about. Is sometimes people jump way too early into building tech and build a product. And I think some of the advantages or some of the steps that you took were working on projects, understanding what the client really needed, and then you understanding your processes first. And I think that's good insight for anyone listening. Just make sure that before you jump into building something, you've got real clarity on where you're going. And I'm sure that's evolved over time from where it was then, Rob, to where it is now. But it was a good place to base and start from. So, Chris, jump into the whole jumping at different states, because I'm imagining every council is different.
Yeah.
All regulations are different.
Different wording is different.
No
just to be different for the reason.
Australia's 8 or 9 different countries. It's crazy. And I suppose, even through COVID and all the stuff going on with state governments, it really highlights that to the general public, how different we really are between one state to the next. And the planning rule structure was something that was definitely a challenge. Not one state is like another state. So you're really doing 9 different things, or 8 or 9 different things. So I guess it was, like we said before, it was really just a lot of understanding the requirements, really going through what it looks like at the start, finding people that can help you. We've engaged planners in different states to consult with us the whole time, and really so we become that single source of truth that we want to be for the general property developer or architect or someone out there that's trying to save time. But like Western Australia is probably one of the biggest challenges for us. That's the most way out different to any of the eastern states, and they'll tell you the same thing from over there. But every state definitely has its unique challenges.
Is it getting you prepared to go to the US?
Yeah, I guess it's funny, it's all a big practice run for the States, I guess. And what's comforting about the United States is that a lot of the terminology is the same as even New South Wales.
Okay.
They run zoning. They have single family, multifamily sort of scenario. That's like low density, high density residential, and then each set of rules is linked back to those zones, basically on a map, and that's the premise of ArchiStar and how it all works. It starts from there.
Okay, so there's a clear hierarchy across how everything's sort of down to the lowest level it's planned.
Absolutely,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. There's just a lot more of it.
Yeah, there's states and counties and federal and whatever goes inside of that.
Counties. Yep.
It's good that you had the, say, 30 customers that you did it by hand first, so you knew that there was a need in the market. You've got your process in place. You've refined it as much as you could and got it as efficient as you could. And then it sort of sounded like your MVP was a tool for you to use yourself first. So how do we just get part of this process quicker and then do the rest by hand?
Definitely. Yeah. So the tool was used by us first before we released it out to the wild. And then, we did like a kind of gradually started rolling it out to different people. And over time, it just keeps like it's one of those tools that it's like constant and never-ending improvement, really, because what you'll find is that you'll never get a perfect tool. Like there's always going to be edge cases that you miss or things like that, or new things come up that you didn't anticipate before. But it's just about continually making it better and better. And go. It's like whack-a-mole, basically. So every time you think you've won, another head pops up and you've got to whack it down again. So, but it's great. Like it keeps us interesting. We've got a very, very quick kind of development methodology. So we're really quick at getting things out the door. And we'd rather have something out the door at 80, 85% than waiting that extra time to get it fully to 100%, because we know that we can iterate quickly once that release is out in market. So we'd much rather release fast, even if it's at 80, 85, 90%, rather than waiting for the whole thing to be completely perfect before going to market.
Yeah, it's something we tell people is don't forget to ship. And like, there's no such thing as perfect. And what you think, unless you've gone through the right way of assessing the requirements, what you're developing might not be what the client wants. Even when they've explained it to you, once they get it, it could be completely different.
Totally. And then exactly right. Like you might have spent that extra 3 weeks to get that last 10% done, but then it doesn't matter because they didn't really like it. You got to recode it anyway. So totally on the same page there.
Do you also follow the philosophy of like it's okay to ship with some bugs if you tell the customers about them, so that way you can get it out 100%. Quickly?
Yeah, 100%. Because like if it's not shipped, it doesn't exist in my view. Like no, you have the best stuff on your in your development environment or on a testing server, but until the client see it, it doesn't exist.
Yep.
Yeah, it's that gathering of feedback that you get for that last 10, 15% of your product is that's where the gold is. We've been doing a lot of work with home builders in the last 18 months, and that's a really good example of we build a product to about 80%, and then we tailor the last 20% to each individual builder. Even though they're all facing the same problems, they're trying to solve them differently, and that's really important to them because they end up with a product that's theirs. And it's the beauty of the SaaS product that we've built. It is flexible enough to do stuff like that with, the absolute genius of Ben and Rob and how they've set this thing out right from the start. It's quite unique in that way.
In terms of going back to how you built the product and the MVP to begin with, did you internalize team at the beginning? How did you go about this? Was Ben the guy putting the early stage MVP together, or what was the scenario there in terms of how you built MVP?
Yeah, look, I think it's important to have the right kind of team structure at the start as well. So at the start, our first few team members were all really good generalists and didn't need a whole lot of structure. So like it wasn't like we had to do weekly or fortnightly sprints with clearly defined business cases and cards and things like that. It's like that stuff all has a place, and but at the start it's kind of like, okay, we need to build this. We need to move pretty quickly, and sometimes it's great to have people that can accept a looser scope where you can kind of just sit next to them and say, okay, we need to do this or this or this because is that cool. I think as you get bigger, you need to slow down a bit and then have more defined and better kind of user scoping and requirements and things like that. But at the start, it's important to have those. If you didn't have those kind of people that can kind of just take a bit of a light brief and run with it, it just take a lot longer to get that first product at the door, which you haven't really got the time to do. Like you've got a very kind of short runway at the start to kind of validate it either way. And so, yeah, like Ben in himself, like Ben's a really quick coder. Like, so Ben kind of pick up a concept and whip something up in a night. Like you come back the next day and it's kind of version 1 ready to go. And then it's like our original few people in the business were very, still are very similar to that. And so, but the thing is like, that's great at the start, but then over time, when you've got thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of users, you need to then build the code a lot more scalable, right? And so those people are awesome at the start and for new features and getting things out the door. Then you need a different team for, a more enterprise and scalable product as well. So yeah, but I think if you get the order of those hires wrong, then it can like lead to a lot of delays in getting the product out the door. And the opposite, like if you got the wrong people working at the mature state of the business, like they might get bored. It's like, all I'm doing is running unit tests all day. I just want to get some cool stuff out the door. So yeah, I think it's kind of horses for courses, so to speak.
Yeah, I think I agree there. I don't even know much about us, but our background, we run a software consulting business. Anthony is one of those guys that would just get anything done pretty quickly, but it would be a bit buggy and a bit messy, but it's done and it works and you can see the outcome really quickly. And you get other people to clean that up. But I think you need those people in the early stage because getting a product out the door, like you said, you need to validate it. You need to make sure you're on the right track. You're not just spending 6-12 months building an MVP. That's not really what the point of it is. It's the quicker we can get it out, the better generally. Now, early on, you mentioned that you've raised, I think you said $30 million. Now, from starting out as a consulting business through to academy to where you are today, it's moved very quickly from what I can see in terms of what's happened. So what's been the impact and the changes to the business along the journey of raising that sort of capital? How did you go about that? And then what's that meant for the business in terms of how you've operated it and how you've been running it as you've been growing?
Yeah, look, I think for us, in terms of the capital raising, we were very fortunate that our first few investors were quite well known in the property and tech space, and they had a lot of connections as well. So once they made the decision to kind of come in as investors, they were very helpful with introductions to their contacts and other people that they knew as well. And so, it wasn't really until about 18 months ago, about almost 2 years ago now, where we actually raised our first venture capital check from a professional VC firm. Before that, it was all high net worth individuals and family offices and things like that. So, again, I think it's all about kind of getting the right investors at the right stage. Like if you pitch a VC right at the start where your idea isn't fully formed yet and you haven't got great metrics and things like that, like there are some VCs now that I'm seeing that are getting even earlier, like into that early kind of seed stages, but it's less likely still. So always better to have an angel investor or a friend or family or a contact at that stage. I suppose it's a lot bigger risk but bigger reward, coming in at that early stage. So yeah, and then I think the way that we did it by kind of doing that way and then bringing in the professional investors later on once we're a bit more mature was probably the right journey for us, for our business at least. Yeah.
In terms of you obviously got a marketing and sales background, and you mentioned you sold your marketing agency. For you, what's the difference been just individually for you coming into a business, just working on one business, one marketing, one aspect of it, sales aspect of it? Because I imagine that's a bit of a different change for you. How has that been for you as one of the co-founders coming in?
Yeah, look, I've enjoyed it. I think there's pros and cons of both business models. So agency is great because it's exciting. You get to work with so many different businesses and understand them. But the challenge with agency is that the work can be quite transient as well. So like you might do a really good campaign for a business and through no fault of your own, like they change strategy and they don't need you anymore, or they hire a new head of marketing and they got their own agencies they like better for what it like. So, and then I'm kind of the kind of person that kind of puts my whole body and soul into it, whatever I do. So like I never treated agency clients like a client. Like I treat them, if I had like 10 clients, I'd treat them all like my own business, which is not the way you should do it.
But I imagine they would have appreciated that. So that's for sure.
Yeah, I think the clients really like me and I got good results for them because I cared so much. Like if I was managing their advertising budget, I'd treat that like my own money. So Whereas I know like we've hired a couple of agencies while we've been at ArchiStar, and like I look at the results, I'm like, how did you how'd you spend that many thousands of dollars and didn't check that no one converted off that? Like, you should have known off the first $100 no one was going to like that ad or whatever. So, like I think going back to my agency, like I really cared a lot about all the clients. But I think it's great having just one business to focus on, because with my kind of personality, I can just put my whole energy into just one business, and kind of get better results and outsized returns rather than kind of spreading myself too thin across 10 different businesses or more. Yeah.
That makes sense. Chris, on to you. I know you're working a little more heavy-handed in terms of the product development in the early stages. Tell us a bit about the journey and what sort of changed from when you started 3.5 years ago to now, and how it's really evolved with the team growing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I came into the business when there was probably 10 or 15 people in our little Castlereagh Street office. And like Rob said, we're up in excess of 75 now, I think, and we use some offshore resources as well. It's grown quite considerably in that respect, and it's meant that we have had to be a lot more structured. We were all Swiss Army knife employees at the start. You had to do a bit of everything, such as the case with any small business and definitely any startup. And a lot of it was just under the guide of Ben as a really sort of hands-on founder. Like Rob said, he could code things. So, if he gave people a task and it wasn't done quick enough, you knew you just had to do it. Otherwise, Ben would just do it anyway. And that wasn't the way it needed to go long term, and everyone knew that. And we've got a really good base of loyal team members that have stuck around. It shows. There's a lot of passion for what we do, and I think that's something that hasn't been lost on anyone through the journey. It's really been quite enjoyable and definitely really interesting. As far as the team structure goes, like I said, we've had to start really putting in individual product managers for different aspects of the actual product now, which is really cool. We focus a lot more on design and UI UX rather than just sort of guessing and putting things together the way we think it should go. And I guess me individually, I get paid to talk to people for a living. So, I'm talking with clients, with, leads and prospective clients. We do a lot of work with government these days. They're really interesting conversations, diving deep into some of those, I guess, problems that can be solved by software such as what ArchiStar does. So, and then feeding those back onto the different product managers and the different people in the product teams. Whereas before it was one person, now you're telling a team of people. It's really, really rewarding.
Yeah, no, really good to hear. In terms of the vision for the company, I'll probably lean on this for you, Rob. What's the vision for yourself and Ben? Where do you see this going? What's the big, hairy, audacious goal, as they might say, for ArchiStar?
Yeah, look, we think of it as kind of like a digital end-to-end platform for property development. So anywhere from kind of finding a site all the way through to assessing it, generating that building design, but even going through to like complying with government requirements is even further down that project. So I think if you look at the whole building end-to-end industry, or like property development industry, like the more of that we can help digitize, the better. I think one kind of error we've made is maybe trying to do too much at once and too quickly, rather than kind of biting off one apple at a time. So like in recent times, we've said, okay, that's still our vision and we still want to do all of that. But, with the resources that we have, we're going to chew off kind of one bite at a time. Yeah, rather than trying to tackle the whole world in one go.
Yeah, you never do everything right if you go down that path. It's just everything might be a bit half done and half baked if you go down that approach.
100%. Everything will be like a 5 or 6 out of 10. Yeah. Whereas we can now say, okay, great, let's get this one right, and let's move to the next one and get that right, and kind of move across like that. So, I think it's still exactly the same vision as we've had, but just probably a bit more realistic on the timing of execution across each of the different pieces of work there.
That's always an interesting one, what our expectations are on execution. How is that? How have you found that working in a tech business from yourself, Rob? Just sort of
everything always takes longer than you think it should.
It's generally the reality of technology.
I don't know. Everyone I always speak to, like, I was talking to a guy. He was, CTO of quite a decent sized business, and then he started his own business, and he was like the only person, and he was doing all the coding himself. He's like, I'm the coder, and I'm still too slow. You know, it's me. So, it's like a never-ending problem. But I think, especially as you get bigger, you've got to do more testing because it impacts more people, and so you can't just kind of say, oh, yeah, just put that button there and it'll be fine, or, change this or add this feature in. And then, it also gets a bit trickier with prioritization because we've got literally hundreds of feature requests. So, there's no shortage of great ideas from our clients that we've kind of, collated over the years. And we'd love to do every single one of them. And the challenge is just prioritizing it because, sometimes people will come to you and go, look, ArchiStar is so good, we love it, but if you just did this one more thing, then I'll sign up, And at the start, you can just add that one thing in, right? Because it's easy. But the challenge is when there's 251 more things, which one do you do first? And so prioritization has always been that, probably the trickiest thing for us. We are getting better over time with the process around it, but it's still never easy to kind of get right.
I think that's always interesting for people. Early days, like you said, you can go and do that 1 or 2 tweaks just to onboard a customer and sort of make that work when you've got 5-10 customers in the products. But as you grow and scale, you have to make sure you're running end to end, your continuous integration, your testing's there, everything's thoroughly managed and pushed out. You don't want to break it when you've got so many users. In terms of users, how many are actually accessing the system today?
Oh, there's thousands. Yeah, so there's a big stack of users. And with the Academy product, there's, I think, almost 100,000 now, maybe even more than 100,000. So,
yeah, nice.
We've been really happy to get out to such a big user base in a relatively niche product. Yeah.
And it is niche. That's one of the advantages that you do have, because I think people can sometimes go too broad and being very niche in terms of a product and delivering real value. In looking at the product, in terms of architects, how will they sort of engage with the product? Because obviously they still can play a part, but if you're doing things programmatically, what's the impact to the architects and the design and the building models, etc.?
Yeah, so a lot of the architects are our clients. So what they'll do is, because a developer might go to an architect at the start of the process and say, hey, what can I kind of fit on this site? And then the architects were doing what we were doing at the start. So that kind of manual process where it might be half a day, a few days work. And quite often that work's not paid. So they'll do it as kind of business development, which is great. It's been a proven thing. But if they can do that in a couple of minutes on ArchiStar rather than spending a day or two on it, it means they can do a lot more and kind of pitch for more work. So a lot of the more savvy architects are using ArchiStar as a bit of a business development tool to say, hey, look, here's, sure, if you want something quick, here you go. And, if you want something a bit more detailed, you can pay for it. So I think it's been a really good fit for those kind of tech savvy architects.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense because that's what everyone wants to know, especially the smaller developers, etc., that go straight to the architect. What can I fit on here? How do I squeeze an extra townhouse in this spot, etc.? And if they're spending a day working that out for them, they might not be getting paid. They might not even own the property yet. So
and the developers just don't like paying like that because they might be looking at 50 sites at the same time. So you don't want to pay every single time you just want to ask a quick question, but then it's not fair for the architect either because they're, how many free favors can you ask for? So it's kind of that weird, that weird kind of awkward relationship where, it's kind of unstated, but just kind of what happens in the industry. So hopefully we're helping kind of alleviate that awkwardness and then allowing the architects to work on, a lot more of the work that they get paid more to do rather than that early stage kind of free or very low cost work.
Oh, brilliant. In terms of some of the learnings, you mentioned that you'd do things a little bit in bite-sized chunks at some of the things, but if you go back and reflect upon what's worked and what hasn't, what are some of the things that you would do differently other than just breaking things into bite-sized chunks?
Yeah, look, I think over time, we've probably been a bit too quick to say yes to a lot of stuff. So a client will come and say, hey, look, I'd sign this good contract if you can just do this one more feature. And we'd say, yeah, that's easy to do. We would do it. But what we didn't kind of look at was how many other clients could use that feature. And so we built a lot of stuff where it's for one client or only a few clients have used it. And then there's been a lot of work and effort and time to do that. And it looks great. It's like, oh, we got that great contract, but we haven't been building, like, it's kind of a point solution in time where, like, we're not geared up, like our investors haven't geared up and kind of invested in us to build kind of like individual solutions. It's more trying to build once and sell many. And then so I think with hindsight, like I probably would have been a bit faster to kind of partner up with people like yourselves who can do custom stuff for clients. So to say, well, okay, here's kind of our core platform, what it does. And then if you need something custom, then, you can work with an agency or your own IT team or whatever you need to do to make that happen rather than us kind of taking that on. So, because then we could have invested that time to make the core platform stronger for a wider group of users.
Yes, so it sort of takes...
I was saying, when you're at that level, you need to focus on your product. So you have to serve the product, not the customer. That makes sense.
You do, and it's hard. It's hard.
It's difficult, because you've got to bring revenue in, right?
100%. Like, it's the right advice. Then, like, when a customer's kind of got a check in front of you and you need revenue and, to kind of grow, and you got it. So, but in hindsight, like, making a few more tough decisions like that and saying no a bit more often, probably would have accelerated our journey with that core platform to a big... So, yes, you might be saying no to one customer, but then you're saying yes to hundreds or thousands of other ones. But it's, again, in the heat of the moment, it's not easy to step back a bit from the weeds and look at the bigger picture.
Definitely not easy.
No. It's a real balance beam. Like, it's something that's really apparent being there so long. It is, you're walking that tightrope the whole time of working on the core product, doing some things that could potentially bring in some immediate revenue, even though they may be one-offs for a particular customer. You don't know where they're going to lead. And software such as ours, like, once people start using it, they're like, can it do this? Can it do that? Can it do that? And the answer is always yes. The thing that we probably could have focused on a little bit better over the years is when. So even if we did say yes, it was then building in some lead times. Yes, we'd love to do that. And we can do that in 4 months or in 3 months, and then see where it sits. But yeah, it's a challenge as a young company, I guess.
A young tech company that's especially you're exciting the industry a little bit with what you're capable of doing, and then everyone becomes creative all of a sudden, and what else can we do? But that's great for you too, because you're getting ideas from everybody, right? It's just adding more robustness and concepts to the product. But yeah, prioritizing that is not overly easy when you've got, like you said, hundreds and 200, 300 priorities sitting in a backlog. Where do you start? So yeah, it's a tough one.
I think measuring those sort of things is something we've gotten really, really good at. There's so many different tools out there these days for working out priority. Doing URI scores and measuring tech effort, and even collating those hundreds of product requests and feature requests to find out which ones are repeated. Something as simple as that. Over the years, we've got 50 people that have taken these requests. If you can't put them all into one repository and start comparing them side by side, it makes it really, really hard. And that stuff's just getting better and better, and we're getting better and better at it.
What's some of the processes you put into play there? Because you mentioned you're getting better at it. So what exactly are you doing in that area?
Yeah, even the other day, I think we've got 3 or 4 different product squads that have all gone through probably 20 to 30 product requests for the next, let's say, the next 2 quarters, and really just prioritized them on, what are we saying? Reach, impact, maybe usefulness, and how confident you are at actually giving that score itself, and gone through that as a team with all probably 10 key stakeholders at a time in the business that know what they're talking about in that particular field. That's one way. And then, like I said before, measuring, just doing a lot of, getting data on our own usage and the way our customers are using the product. Like Rob said, there's thousands of, for lack of a better word, testers out there that are telling us what's right and what's wrong with the product on a daily basis, and capturing that information is a challenge in itself, and then paying attention to it. So yeah, lots of measures, lots of metrics, getting a lot of data, and then really reviewing it as a team, and doing the right thing from there, rather than it just being one person going, this is what I think we should do.
In terms of, you mentioned managing the roadmap. What does that look like? Is that managing a quarterly, annual? What do you do in terms of sort of managing your roadmap in terms of what's the core direction you want to take compared to what's coming in from everywhere else, from the customers themselves?
Yeah, I think we've, again, hasn't been our strong suit in the past. So we've been it's been hard for us to stick to a roadmap because we've kind of put a roadmap in place and then we get all these hundreds of requests and it's like, okay, well, let's stop doing that and move this over here and do this first. But recently, probably the last 6 months or so, we've got a lot better at saying, okay, look, this is what we're going to do this quarter. We're locking it in. Does everyone agree with that? Yes. Okay, cool. We're all on track. Okay. So I think it's more about, again, just maturing as a company and getting more disciplined and saying, okay, look, if $1 million account comes along and wants something this quarter, well, tough. Like it's, we've locked it in. They can do it next quarter. So whereas before we'd say, no, stop everything. Put that in first. But yeah, I think it's just kind of getting more disciplined and professional as a business to say, well, no, we've locked in our quarter. That's our quarter. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, I think it's improving over time. Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing ever perfect in any business, let alone from startup through to where you are now, 70 people. It's still considered a small / going to medium business. But yeah, nothing's ever perfect. You're always learning, always evolving. And I think that's what is exciting, especially in a fast-moving company like yours. I imagine that's what gets you both up in the morning and keeps you moving every day.
And then
nobody's born an ArchiStar.
And then having that revenue and that funding probably gives you a bit more flexibility to say no to those people and puts you in a better position to make those better decisions.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I mean, like our investors always said, like, make sure you're building a good product. Like, yes, revenue is important and to grow, but the most important thing is that you're getting happy users and they're staying along and they're happy, etc. So yeah, I totally agree with that. Like, it's more about the revenue is super important and we've got to keep that growing quickly. That's not non-negotiable, but not at the expense of building a good product and having happy users. Yeah.
Rob, just probably one last question for me. Obviously, from the sales and marketing background, it's obviously a fast-moving company. What inspires you about this business right now when you're in it every day? What's the most inspiring thing for you about the business and where it's all going for you?
Yeah, look, I think for me, it's kind of like an infinite amount of variety in the role. So it's just like there's so much cool stuff that keeps coming across our desk every day. It's and the business keeps reinventing itself all the time. So yeah, I think for me, it's just about I'm a bit of an optimizer and a maximizer. So I like to, if things are like 6 out of 10, it's like, okay, well, how do we get that to 8 or 9 or 10 out of 10? Like, I always like to see what else we can do. So that kind of keeps me, that's my drive, just to kind of keep improving things. What I also get a big kick out of is just seeing people grow in the business. So yeah, like just seeing people when they first join the business to kind of getting promoted within the business and doing great work. It's really exciting. So yeah, it's kind of like that growth of the team plus all the variety that comes across our desk all the time is kind of what keeps me going.
Brilliant to hear. And Chris, from your perspective, being in the business, what excites you about ArchiStar, where it's all going, and why are you on the bus? What excites you there, mate?
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing as what Rob said. To be honest, it's the variety. Any given day, there's so many different things. I mean, I get the opportunity to talk to a lot of different people in a lot of different fields. We've had Zoom calls, especially now we're doing internationally. Like we've met with like rappers that are now into property VC in the States. And,
Great.
We're being hammered on the metaverse at the moment and stuff like that.
Interesting.
It's one of those things, and to just be interested and curious about this sort of stuff and have a company like ArchiStar enable me to do that on a daily basis. That's what I get out of bed for. And then the other side of it, like Rob said, everyone in ArchiStar is on the rocket ship. Like everyone knows where it's going, got a unified vision, and everyone just wants each other to grow and the business to grow, which is really special. I've not been a part of something like that on this magnitude before, and it's definitely exciting.
Yeah, it sounds like an exciting ride that you're both on here and everyone that's involved. So, in terms of coming on the podcast, really thank you for coming on and enjoying and sharing a bit of your journey and what you've learnt over the journey as well. So thanks, Rob. Thanks, Chris. In terms of finding out a bit more about ArchiStar, I'm sure some people are budding property developers that are listening out there. How do they find out about you and if there's some value for them as well?
Yeah, the homepage is kind of constantly updated. So that's probably the best place to get the most up-to-date information. So it's just archistar.ai is the homepage and best place to go.
No, perfect, guys. No, I really appreciate your time and thanks for coming on, and love to catch up in 12, 18 months and see where it's all moved to, because I know it's moving pretty fast, but appreciate you coming on and sharing your story.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks
guys.
Andrew. Thanks, Anthony.
Thanks,
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Anthony.